flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moment of silence. Roll call.
Counselor Coast? Here. Counselor Matthews?
Here.
Counselor Huner?
Here.
Counselor Chamberlain?
Here.
Counselor Allen?
Here.
Counselor Fry?
Here.
All members are present. We have a quorum.
Motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes.
So moved. Second.
Motion moved by Counselor Allen and second by Counselor Huner. Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor Huner?
Yes.
Counselor Fry?
Yes.
Counselor Chamberlain?
Yes.
Counselor Matthews?
Yes.
Counselor Coast?
Yes.
6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries.
You had to be here, Meg. That's all. Don't worry about it.
Names of individuals wishing to address council. Sue?
Hi, do I just start talking?
I just want you to come up here and state your name.
Susan Short?
At the podium. Make it look official.
Okay, Susan Short. And I'd like to talk about the public hearing about the zoning request change. And I don't know all the ins and outs of municipal government. I'm learning a little bit more as we go along. And I don't know if what I'm asking can be done, legal or not legal. I'm just asking that, would you please consider some or all of the following? If it would be possible to schedule a meeting at 7 in the evening to make it possible for people in our neighborhood that live out of town to work, it would be appreciated. The last meeting of the Planning Commission, it was very difficult for those of us in the audience to hear, and there was a lot of misunderstandings about what actually transpired during that meeting. So if we could have adequate sound system at that time. I'm wondering if this is enough space. I don't know if it could be moved to a larger location or to have enough chairs, because it can't be very much fun to be up here with 18 people standing in the back with their arms closed glaring at you when they could be seated someplace. If there are time limits, we'd like to know about them ahead of time instead of just being told we don't want to be here all night, so we hope not everybody's talking. And I don't know if this can be done tonight, but for those of us that aren't involved in this all the time, we really don't know what to expect. Is it one single meeting and the vote will be held? Is it just, do you talk, discuss, ask questions? Is it just present? I mean, I'm just looking for information. And is it going to be like one meeting where we discuss and another meeting where we discuss, or is in a separate meeting where the vote is taken? Just so we know what to expect, I guess, and be informed on that. And I'm also interested in knowing about the supermajority and what part of revised code. Is that going to come into play at this decision-making time? And where in revised code can I look at that? So that's basically the 6 areas I have that are concerned. Thank you.
Thank you. We can, we'll address that, and somebody can get back with you, Sue, or
But it
answer
won't be
those
tonight?
questions. Pardon me?
It won't be tonight.
Probably not. Unless you want to answer
Can
all
we bring
those
that up in
questions
new
right now.
business before we do the, I mean,
I think council's going to consider the motion, date and time at the end of new business, so I think that would encompass part of the issues that are discussed. And I guess, I mean, I'm reluctant to say much because it's probably a good time to introduce Mark Hagens, Attorney Mark Hagens from Archibald, who's serving as special counsel with respect to both the zoning application and the PUD proposal. I think some of you, most of you may know Mark. Mark is the village solicitor at Archibald and is a partner in the law firm in Archibald. So I want to defer to him with respect to any legal issues. I guess I can say with respect to just the last issue that was raised, that with respect to the, I mean, this is just a general principle, the council's means of deciding the zoning issue is set forth in the charter and not governed by the revised code. It's in charter, I think, 4.11. So and I'm sure Mark will be discussing that with council when it reaches the point where it's ready to make a decision. So, and I think Mark can discuss with council with respect to some of the issues in the meeting, setting up the meeting when we get to that point on the agenda.
Okay. Moving on to committee reports. Personnel.
We had a personnel meeting on, before our committee, the whole meeting, last Wednesday, and Thursday, thank you. Chief Sluter wanted us to discuss a proposal that he has written in regards to the conversion of Lifestar employees to City of Wauseon firefighter EMTs. So they would be actual employees of the City of Wauseon. He did prepare a proposal for everybody to take a look at on the Personnel Committee. We took a look at that. The Lifestar contract's going to be expiring at the end of the year, but the county commissioners are asking for proposals or ideas to be submitted to them before July, I believe. So Chief Sluter put a proposal together. The process is to convert the 5 full-time Lifestar employees over into City of Wauseon employees. This has a lot to do with retention of employees, and Chief Sluter, you can chime in anytime, but basically we train employees and they want to go someplace that will hire them full-time, and we've lost employees, potentially very good employees that live right here to Sylvania's and Perrysburg's, places that are bigger that actually hire them full-time. So we did approve Chief Sluter to go ahead and take that proposal to the county commissioners, and so he will be doing so when we
Right now, it's
haven't heard from them.
scheduled for July to be there. We haven't heard nothing firm from them.
Okay. So the Personnel Committee did make a recommendation to bring to council to accept that Chief Sluter take the proposal to the commissioners.
Any questions? Okay. Motion to accept the personnel report and its recommendations?
So moved. Second. They're dealing with both recommendations involving the additional funding as well. Is that
One,
That's part of the proposal.
yeah, the one, as far as converting the Lifestar employees to our own, wouldn't have anything to do with the county's additional funding. There's sort of 2 separate issues. The county doesn't care who does the work. Like us in Delta use Lifestar, Archwold and Swan don't. It's just a matter of us having our own employees. The money that you get from them is for you to just complete the service.
But the motion is to accept both, I think, which you can do unless you want to separate them out for whatever reason.
No, my motion should stand. Yes. Both of them together.
Motion moved by Counselor Matthews and second by Counselor Fry. Is there any discussion? Counselor Matthews?
Yes.
Counselor Fry?
Yes.
Counselor Coast?
Yes.
Counselor Huner?
Yes.
Counselor Chamberlain?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
Abstain.
5 yeas, 1 abstain, motion carries.
Building and grounds report.
Building grounds met Thursday morning with all the committee members present. Also, Mr. Martin and Mario Estrada were here to discuss behind downtown billiards. There is a section back in the parking lot that is a grassy area, and they were requesting that they use that for a smoking area instead of having their clientele stand out front on Fulton Street smoking. They go out and have a cigarette break in that, back in that grassy area. They said that they would police it, maintain it, put pavers down, a picnic table, and whatever else needs to be out there. The committee thought there was no problem with that, and that's it.
May I add one thing, Fred?
Sure.
They also said that under no circumstances whatsoever there'll be any alcohol allowed out behind. It will have to stop at the door.
No fencing, correct? That's the way I'm reading it.
Right, at least why it's not at this time. We don't really want a fence around, because if you do have a fence around, someone might have
Right.
something in there.
That's hard
This
to
way
see.
it's wide open and it's just a spot for them to go out and have a cigarette. And we thought it looked better out back than standing in front of the establishment.
In reading, I'm sorry.
How big area is this, Brad? 10 by 10, 10 by 20?
It's probably 20 by 10.
It's a triangular
And it's a
spot.
triangular.
Okay. That's fine.
It's an
Right now it's grass area.
curved around it.
All right. Comment?
In reading the report, you had anticipated that there would be some sort of short, basic legal agreement with the folks,
Correct.
which we could provide sort of, hold harmless and identification language and that sort of thing.
And then we can do a check every now and then to see how things are going. If it's not up to our standards, then we can void the, I don't want to really call it a contract, but we can void the paperwork on it that way then too.
Is the area that they're going to use readily identifiable such we wouldn't really need a diagram or anything attached to it? Just
No,
a-
it's most identifiable
Okay.
because it's a grassy area.
And it's right out their back door.
Okay. Is the area, with respect to the smoking laws, is the area sufficiently far away from the door that it wouldn't be
it
a
is.
problem? Okay.
Yeah, Dennis was gonna look into that.
Yes, it is. I talked with Kevin about it with the health department.
Good.
Okay.
I'd make a motion to accept the building and grounds recommendation.
Second.
Motion moved by Counselor Chamberlain and second by Counselor Huner. Is there any discussion? Counselor Chamberlain?
Yes.
Counselor Huner?
Yes.
Counselor Matthews?
Yes.
Counselor Coast?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor Fry?
Yes.
6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries.
Park Board.
Yeah, Park Board, we had a Park Board meeting on June 10. We welcomed our new Park Board member, David Carroll, to the group. And one of the issues we talked about during the Park Board meeting were recycled containers being placed out at Biddle Park. It was brought to my attention that a lot of plastic and aluminum is going in the landfills and things like that. Maybe we could be a little more eco-friendly with some recycling containers. So the Park Board had good discussion about those ideas. I brought a couple of options as far as recycling containers and what the appearances of those would be. They sided with something that could be affixed to the ground, has a lid to it so there's no rainwater issues. So tonight, the recommendation out of the Park Board is to pursue purchasing 5 to 8 of those recycling containers. I told Park Board I was just looking for a recommendation from them as to moving forward with that initiative, and I would track down the funding through other means. So tonight's recommendation is solely seeking council's blessing to pursue 5 to 8 recycling containers out at Biddle Park. Other business, Dave Murray said the construction of the pavilion at Biddle Park will start very soon, and that will be out in the general area of that playground equipment at Biddle Park. And as far as Biddle Park goes, this coming weekend is going to be a very busy weekend as Aaron Tiplady and the Parks Department is anticipating 100 fast pitch softball games at Biddle Park, so busy time.
Cool.
Yep.
Motion to accept the Park Board reports and recommendation.
So moved.
Second?
Motion moved by Counselor Allen and second by Counselor Matthews. Is there any discussion? Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor Matthews?
Yes.
Counselor Coast?
Yes.
Counselor Huner?
Yes.
Counselor Chamberlain?
Yes.
Counselor Fry?
Yes.
6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries.
Moving on to department head reports. We'll start with you, David.
I am continuing to work on the Community Development Block Grant, Downtown Revitalization Grant for Wauseon. That application deadline is to the state at 5 p.m. this Friday. I have been working to garner support from the city of Wauseon, monetary commitments through RLF and other areas. Tomorrow I'm meeting in front of the county commissioners. I did Thursday, but tomorrow they're making a decision on funding that they will commit to the project, hopefully, out of the allocation program, which is $100,000 that the county has awarded through the Community Development Block Grant Allocation Program. And then also I am seeking $75,000 through their county RLF also to be committed to the downtown revitalization. So we'll get some word on that tomorrow. So if anybody wants to come to the county commissioners meeting tomorrow, that's at 9 o'clock, you can offer your support. That'd be nice. So I'm gonna be busy this week. I have 2 grant applications that are the 2 big ones of the year that I deal with. So this Friday is gonna be, don't come visit my office. I'm gonna be scurrying around. That's all.
That's it? All right. Thank you. Rick, Chief Sluter.
Fire department's in fireworks mode, getting geared up for July 4th. This Sunday is a fundraiser at Tiny's Dairy Barn in the afternoon, right after church from like 11 to 2. Free will donation for food that these provide in there. And we're working to get the park set up and ready with the police department for the day's festivities. And other than that, not too much new in the fire department.
The fundraiser, was that good last year?
It was a little bit down last year. We held it in May last year. We're trying to hold it a little bit closer to fireworks and that sort of thing's on people's minds right now. So we'll try it this year in June and see what happens.
What was the time for that, Rick?
We're 11 to 2.
We're working over the fire department's fundraiser for Sarah's Garden. Is that still happening?
Yes, that's for the Northwest. That raffle is at the Northwest Ohio Firemen Volunteer Firemen's Association meeting this Saturday.
Okay.
And that's for the playground equipment. The fire departments all have raffle tickets for their special needs playground equipment that they're purchasing down there.
So get tickets before Saturday?
Get tickets before Friday.
Okay.
And that's at Founder's Hall.
No, that drawing will be, I believe, at, what's that?
Northwood.
Yeah, at Northwood at the
Oh,
Firemen's Convention.
what's
That Founders, that's something else.
Oh,
That's a different day.
I know it is.
I do have one question. Being out at the fairgrounds, will the 9/11 memorial be
Yeah,
ready
we're
to
working,
go?
we actually put us a lot of base and then we're getting things formed up this week for a concrete
Great,
pour.
yeah.
That's under, flag poles are ordered, some stones and tuffets are ordered, so that's in the process of being finished for fair time too.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Chief Torben.
I gave you 2 pieces of paper. One was a basic synopsis of the Youth Police Academy, which we held last week. We had 10 of the 15 kids show up. We had several kids that were double booked at different camps, so they couldn't make it, but we did have 10 complete the program. This just gives you a basic rundown of what they did each day, as well as some of the evaluations that they had turned in. They all seem to have a very good time, and several of them even are ready to come back next year. So. Also, I gave you a piece of paper with a breakdown of Biddle Park. That is for the 4th of July. We're looking at putting up some snow fence barriers on the south side of the park. We had issues last year where cars were driving around the main baseball fields as well as in through people's yards. So that's going to be completely barricaded off. Anyone leaving the Biddle Park will have to leave. If they leave out the south side, they're going to be sent south. If they leave out the north gate, they're going to go north. Both Wagner and Bannister drives will be shut off. So everyone's going to go to Airport Highway into Linfoot and then shuttled from there. We already know there's going to be hundreds, if not thousands, of people parked on Shoup Avenue, so we're going to try and keep everybody off of there if at all possible to get people out as quickly as possible. I'm going to try and get a cleaned up version of this to INTV as well as to the paper so they can put it out. I tried copying, and as you can see, it didn't copy very well, so we'll try and get something a little bit more presentable out to the paper so that the people actually know.
They were parked on Shoup Avenue, did you say?
Oh yeah, there was hundreds of cars parked in the plaza, in the old drive-in, at St. Casper's,
Restaurants up there.
all the restaurants, and we ended up having an hour-and-a-half traffic jam on Shoup, so we need to keep as much traffic off of Shoup as possible. We realize people may have to go a couple of miles out of their way, but it's going to keep them, they're going to get home quicker taking that couple mile detour than what they will trying to get back on the Shoup Avenue.
Well, I've said this for the last couple of years, and I'll say it again. I don't understand why people don't want to come to Biddle Park, because that's where all the activity is. That's where the music is. that's set up for the fireworks. And I tell you, it's very impressive when this music matches what the fireworks is doing. Plus, the low-line fireworks, you get too far away from Biddle, you're not going to see that.
Well, I can't understand. We had people 10 minutes after the fireworks started start leaving, so I can't understand that either. And the park will be closed to incoming traffic at 10 o'clock so that my officers can get relocated to their other positions.
Now, another question. When people arrive, we'll actually be coming into these driveways where you have only you have these,
Right.
that's where everybody will
They can
come in
either drive.
and park.
Yeah.
Then at 10 o'clock, it says Wagner and Bannister Street will be closed at 10. And everybody that's in there will just follow this map then on the way out.
You go
South or
North or
north?
south?
north or south.
Right, okay.
Any other questions? All right,
Thank you.
thank you. Moving on, Tom.
We've been reviewing a couple commercial site plans that were submitted last week, so we're in the process of reviewing that. One's for a medical facility, the other one's for self-storage units. Working with Public Works and Dennis on that, getting the site plan reviews now. So what we're concentrating on.
All right, thank you.
Question real quick. Tom McWaters, did you forward that email on to Tom?
I did indeed.
Okay,
yeah.
Tom, did you get, what's that?
Did you go home? Dirt mode.
Oh, was it mowed? Got done today then?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Dennis.
The water tower project is progressing. The contractor's mobilizing. Work should begin this week. Water's out of the tank, and it will be down for no more than 2 months. So the whole thing ought to be done well before the fair. In the civil service process for laborers in the Public Works department, the Civil Service Commission has certified the list, the eligibility list. We have conducted second round interviews, and hopefully before the next meeting we'll have a couple new people. Last week on Thursday, I believe it was the 12th, we had a walkthrough of the Linfoot Street project with O.R. Colin Associates, as well as Continental Valuations. These are the folks that do the appraisals on the properties, the temporary easements and the permanent easements that are necessary for doing this project. And essentially, without going into all their acronyms and terms, this was for them to determine each and every property where we need a temporary or a permanent take, which ODOT approved appraisal method they will use for each individual property. That was conducted, and I have already received paperwork subsequent to that, which came from Continental Valuations, gets forwarded on to O.R. Colin for their appraiser, and that ball gets rolling. So, good news there.
Thank you. Jamie?
I do not have much at the middle of the month. However, I did check on the online water bills. We have 48 people, so we've got a long ways to go. So anybody that wants to sign up for electronic water bill, visit our website.
Thank you.
We have one more thing. I'm sorry. I was going to announce on the 4th of July weekend there will be the this year's version of the Tiny's Dairy Barn Summer Classic baseball tournament. Little League people from 8U up to 14U. We are on pace. It looks like there are over 20 teams signed up so far. We may have 30 or more by the cutoff time. And we have one team that is coming to us from the Burlington Bears from Burlington, Ontario, which is near Hamilton and Toronto, making the trek to Wauseon for this classic tournament. So that'll be cool.
Make it international.
Yes, it does. It's an international tournament now.
Hey?
Tom?
Just two short things. One, I'm continuing to work along with John Whitmore, Assistant Prosecuting Attorney, with the Union Cemetery Board with respect to the erection of their building, and John representing the Township Trustees. We did receive a challenge to the awarding of the bid by Perry Roop from Roop Rosebrock, indicating they thought the bid for that was accepted by the lowest bidder, from the lowest bidder, was invalid. So John and I are going to be meeting along with the principals to evaluate that and determine whether or not that has merit or not. And then also just draw your attention to Ordinance 2014-05, which I think this council knows is an emergency measure of an ordinance that there was a special meeting for last week. And this would make it official so the parties could move forward immediately.
All righty.
Mayor,
Thank you.
Can I add something too? I didn't address a couple things. First off, I just want to thank council members and the folks of Wauseon that I've worked with the Downtown Revitalization Grant. Everybody's been very trusting, and I appreciate that. There's a lot of documentation that I went over, and I verbalized it and did not share a lot of that documentation until the end, and you trusted me to do that I was knowledgeable enough to know that information, and I do appreciate that very much. Also, I did get a proposed project cost for the ADA ramps and sidewalks, and that came in well within what the grant budget would be. So I was very happy to see that. So that will allow, I would suspect, for benches, possibly trash receptacles, maybe some light posts, things of that nature. So along with the building and business owners doing facade improvements and things of that nature that are also a part of that grant. So again, I wanted to thank you for your trust and insight and things. Yeah, and Crosser.
Thank you, Dave.
Sure.
Chief Sluter, you had a couple of functions going on Friday night.
Oh, yeah, we did have 2 fires going on at the same time Friday night at the doctor's office and the dry cleaners. And we had some good mutual aid in town that helped us out with both, and we're taken care of. They've both been investigated by the state fire marshal with no indication of any suspicion.
What are the odds?
What?
What are the odds of that happening?
You never know.
About even money here in Wauseon.
I understand the dry cleaners is gone. That's
I don't know, there's a lot of damage and they're mostly contents.
the doctor's office.
Doctor's office is an electrical fire in the attic, so
Smoke.
once they get their electrician certified, they'll be back up and running.
Don, I lost about 15 shirts, so if I show up in my t-shirt,
I lost a dress,
you'll understand.
too. Oh, well, they lost a lot more than that.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. There is no first reading legislation. Second reading legislation, ordinance 2014-5, vacating the alley that runs east from Franklin Street to the west line of Lot 5 between lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 10 of Green Hughes First Edition and Outlet 1 in EF Green Hughes Edition and declare an emergency.
I'll suspend the rules on 2014-05 and declare an emergency.
I will second that.
Motion moved by Counselor Huner and second by Counselor Matthews. Is there any discussion? Counselor Huner?
Yes.
Counselor Matthews?
Yes.
Counselor Coast?
Yes.
Counselor Chamberlain?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor Fry?
Yes.
6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries.
There's no third reading
We need to
legislation.
find final passage.
I'll do final passage on that.
A second.
Motion moved by Counselor Matthews and second by Counselor Chamberlain. Counselor Matthews?
Yes.
Counselor Chamberlain?
Yes.
Counselor Coast?
Yes.
Counselor Huner?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor Fry?
Yes.
6 yeas, 0 nays, ordinance 2014-5 passes on emergency and is now in effect.
Should be happy.
Now there's no third reading legislation. New business. Motion to schedule a public hearing for Monday, July 7th, 2014 at 5 p.m. Vacate land west end of West Drive, 5.65 acres. Zoning request change from R2 single family residential to PUD planned urban development. Proposal houses, duplex, and triplexes.
Would now be a good time to take care of some of those questions?
That's what I was.
Sure.
Mark, did you jot those issues down that you could address, or maybe, was it Susan?
Yeah.
I mean, the questions that you can take care of, Mark? Or?
Yeah, I'll go from memory
Okay.
briefly. With respect to scheduling of the time, place, manner, and means of that meeting, you can schedule that as you see fit. There's no prohibition that I'm aware of, either under your charter or under state code that prohibits you if you wanted to, flex the time of that meeting. You'll still have to comply with the open meeting requirements and the notice requirements under the sunshine law to make sure it's properly noticed. You got plenty of time to do that as we sit here today. So that's entirely up to you as a council with respect to when you schedule that, number one. Number two, that includes the place as well. I mean, if you wanted to deviate on locations, you just need to notice that properly and you can do that. Do you have an alternate location where you handle meetings?
Choosing the school.
We haven't for a long time, but, would be the school. Sure.
Long.
Would your meeting space, Chief Sluder, be more than that?
It wouldn't be any larger, no.
Yeah, you have a little time to sort that out, and you could certainly direct someone on your professional staff to ascertain an appropriate location, and then make sure that's included in your notice. In my opinion, there wouldn't be a problem if you handled it that way. With respect to what happens procedurally, that meeting is the actual public hearing. So you'll have an opportunity basically to hear the substantive issues that have arisen with respect to your planning commission's recommendation to change zoning on a particular piece of property. I don't think that night you'll vote on what you've heard. That comes up at a subsequent meeting. That's sort of typical of municipal government or government in general, where if you're going to have a public hearing, that's your opportunity to apprise yourself of the facts and the information that would support a yea or nay vote or some other action on your part individually as council persons. So that would be the function of that meeting that night. So I would anticipate thereafter you then schedule a formal meeting to vote on that decision. That's how the planning commission worked. Probably the public wasn't sensitive to that sort of nuance of the law, where you have an actual hearing one night and then it's more the ministerial duties carried out by the public body at a later period. So that's how that would happen. So.
The supermajority vote.
Yeah, to reverse, in this case, there are certain, there's a variety of voting means and manners that happen. You're voting to enact legislation may require a simple majority. And in that case, that's a 4-2 because there's 6 of you. A supermajority is required, and I may have misidentified, Councilman Fried asked me about that. The supermajority is in excess of 50%, which with 6 people, that's a supermajority. Is that, I think, 4 or 5? I think it's 4 of 6 have to vote to reverse legislation. That's a super. I think a supermajority under your charter is at 5 or 4.
It's 3/4, so it'd be 3/4 of 6.
3/4 of 6, which is 70. So that's going to be 5. Yeah. So to get there, you have to have. So you define it under your charter apparently as 3/4. So depending, so if you have 6 eligible to vote on any issue where a supermajority is required, supermajority being defined as 75%. Those are defined differently depending on the legislation. I think your charter defines it as 75%.
Well, justification of why we have to use a supermajority.
Because your charter says so, yeah.
That we have to do that.
There are certain areas, one where you would enact a reversal of a particularized action by an administrative body. It's quite common that supermajorities are required. Part of the rationale is if it's just a straight up majority, why do you have an administrative body doing your work? So it's a higher standard to reverse actions by, and that's true in other areas, not just municipalities, but with state and federal government as well. So it's like a veto.
Yeah.
To override a veto requires a 2/3 vote. It's sort of one of those arcana of the law, and that's just how it's defined. So whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, I can't opine on. It's just how your charter reads. So.
Right.
So if somebody is recused, you can't get 75% of 5.
You can. It's 4 of 5. It would be 75%. Yeah. So
that's 80, that's right, okay.
Yeah, so that would be, So it's a math problem at that point. So if you're down to 4, then it's 3 of 4 exactly. So you can sort all that out for yourself. So, okay. So that voting issue, to go right to your question, I think that comes up then not at the public hearing.
I understand.
Yeah, that comes up at such time as you vote. And it's going to, that math we can't predict today because it's going to depend on members present, B, existence of a quorum, C, who, if any, need to recuse themselves for whatever reason. So, those numbers and that math would change, or could change potentially, based on what happens at that date and time when you actually convene the meeting to enact or, not enact the legislation, so. And then there's a lot of little nuances to how it works mathematically, but, it'd probably be appropriate to address it that night, because, I can't predict who'll be there that night or what action will be taken. Is that fair enough?
Just some, who runs that public hearing? Is it Q&A or is it just collection of information?
It means of manner, yeah, it's means of manner is up to your discretion.
Okay.
You can manage it how you see fit. I think I would recommend you probably would be well suited to have a general agenda for it. If you want to hear from proponents or opponents or any of your paid staff, you can put those on as an organized agenda item. With respect to how that goes out, you need to follow your ordinary course for public hearings on any matter in terms of what you make, the information you make available under the applicable sunshine laws, Open Meeting Act requirements. So, but yeah, you can. That's you sort of have inherent authority to dictate those terms. I'm assuming you've had public hearings in the past, so as long as you kind of are in general concordance with how you've handled those in the past, you probably don't want to deviate case by case. You want to stick to what how you handle that. So. And then publicize, this is how we're going to do it.
Sure.
So
as far as time limits, we just have to come up with whoever runs that meeting, I don't know who's going to run that meeting, has to come up with an idea of how long we're going to allow people to speak.
Yeah, and those that varies depending on the nature and participation. I can tell you from having been at the public meeting for the Planning Commission, I thought proponents and opponents did a nice job of sort of organizing prior to that meeting, so that commission had a pretty good idea of how long, predictably how long we would take, and I thought everybody fairly stuck to that, and that was helpful just from a ministerial standpoint or administrative standpoint. So as far as managing that, I don't know normally if you have kind of a sign-in sheet or whatever, or people that wish to address council directly at that meeting, they can do that. And you can make a determination at that time, from a parliamentary procedure standpoint. If you have 332 people sign up and you give them each 10 minutes, that's going to be the longest meeting in the history of Wauseon meetings, I suspect. So you may wish to say, well, if we can narrow it to...
I don't think this group that was present would not do that, because as you said, they did a very good job of pinpointing what they wanted to get across.
Yeah, that was my experience, to be fair. I thought I was really pleased to see how democracy best served, I suppose. So, but if you had 12 people sign up and you said we'll give each 5 minutes kind of thing, that would certainly be reasonable. So,
I would just like to have a clear plan in place in case 300 people show up, how we're handling that. I don't really want to make decisions on the fly. I would like to have that well established before the public hearing.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, I don't know that there's a prohibition against soliciting, requests in, a week in advance of that meeting or sometime recently. To get a feel. Yeah, you could probably put a request out there with your meeting notice that if you wish to be heard by council at the public meeting, and you could flex on that night. If people didn't get that information, you had a few showed up, 2 or 3 that said, yeah, we'd like to be heard. You don't have to make that hard and fast with it. But if you want to be predictable, if you want a predictable meeting length or the ability to organize that meeting so you're not, again, you don't have, 17 hours of public hearing. So,
and can we clarify that this public hearing is going to be strictly related to zoning and not the layout of the PUD?
Correct. That's, passage or not passage of the change in zoning. The layout's a different issue because that's a separate process and procedure, because that's still technically under your rules and ordinances and charter, that's still in its preliminary planning phase.
So this is a response to the first vote that they did at the Planning Commission?
It's PUD or not PUD, yeah.
And that was a 2-to-1 vote?
Yes.
And then the second issue is what that PUD would look like.
And Planning Commission there's not final plans before Planning Commission yet. Yeah. There's an open window, there's I think a 90-day window for submission of the final plans for approval on that, and we're just at the front end of that. So, and I think that'll come back at the back end here, right? Also,
that will once the commission passes on the final application, right? That'd be sort of the same process, I think.
Yeah, so it's sort of a tag-along process behind what your planning commission does, so. But you're the final arbiter and decider of that in your capacity as council. Any other questions I can help you with?
No. As far as time goes, I have a suggestion on that. I'd like to see us meet at midnight. Well, I mean, let me tell you the reason. Tigers are probably playing that night, so I can watch the whole game, and then we come up to the meeting. So it makes sense to me. Probably nobody else.
I think a time that was mentioned was 7 p.m. We have a council meeting that night, so have we ever moved the council meeting time to a later time?
So we have to just.
Can I make a suggestion on that,
Yes.
Councilwoman? Yeah, you could, unless you don't want to do this for your own schedules, but you could conduct your ordinary business in open session here at your ordinary time, and then just, sort of suspend the meeting until that issue comes up at another time and location. Again, make sure that your notices and the information you put out in the public are clear on that, but then you could just, in effect, kind of suspend the meeting, so if you have a half hour of business here that gets through, your typical, which is sort of what you've done tonight, up to this point, and then you just suspend the meeting and then reconvene it at an alternate time and location. I think that you'd be well within your, authority to do that. So, you agree, Mr. McGuire?
Yeah.
That's probably the best way to handle it, in my opinion, but do what you wish, so.
So you're going to have a comment?
Is there a second committee meeting where that final, where the actual plan is presented? And is that a public hearing?
Public hearing on the PUD plan, is the
When
question?
the planning commission meets.
The amendment, is that what you're
To
saying?
view what, I don't know what, I'm confused, so I don't really know.
The amendment that will be submitted will be held at the planning commission meeting. The public hearing requirements of the planning commission have been met. Any additional information that's presented, amendments to it, just come to the planning commission at their regular meeting or a special called meeting, which would be published in ample time to allow people to know there's changes. So at this point, I would say it's going to be at the regular meeting. I haven't heard anything from the chairman, who is the only person that can call a special meeting. I have not heard from him requesting to call a special planning commission meeting, so the regular meeting will be next Monday,
Monday at
5:15.
I'm a little confused what you just said.
But the final, I don't understand there to be a hearing or a meeting with the final application at next Monday's meeting.
Well, if I can jump in, I think so Mr. Dennis has 90 days from receipt of the certification by Planning Commission on the acknowledgement of approval with modifications of the preliminary application. 90 days to submit a final. And then Planning Commission will meet whenever it determines it's appropriate to meet with respect to review of that final. And then that will be a public meeting that's open to the public. There won't be a public hearing on that. That's already been.
That's
already been.
spells it out.
So the second vote at the planning commission meeting was a vote for the amended to go ahead with that, to bring that to us.
No.
Zoning change.
No.
Yeah, it
Well, they
was- it
did a
was an
zoning
approval.
change, yes,
Yeah.
there, and in the minutes, it says a zoning change, and then there was also the amended. Okay, that's the one that
Yeah,
Sue,
it said that there was a recommendation for the zoning change, part one. Part two was actually an approval subject to modifications or amendments of the preliminary plan as submitted. In
so
other
they're
words,
just approving it.
Planning Commission approved the preliminary plans and instituted, from memory, 2 or 3 additional requirements that would have to be in there for there to even be approval of the final plan. So if what Planning Commission put in there weren't met by the applicant, Planning Commission would deny the application. Now, obviously, someone can go ahead and reapply at a later date. That starts the
Right.
process over. But in this case, they had, I think, 3 specific requirements or amendments that they would impose for the final plans to be considered and or approved. So,
I guess that's why I was a little confused,
too.
because I
Yeah.
thought we were just talking about, strictly about zoning when they threw that.
you are at this point.
But I thought
But
they
there's-
were too.
Right.
And
They-
when they voted, I mean, I probably got lost in some of the conversation that I couldn't hear, but when they voted, I thought that there was some other, something on the table for the actual plan. For the zoning to go through, the plan had to have X, Y, and Z. And to me, it's two separate things. You're either gonna change it to this zoning for PUD, and then step 2, separate,
Yes.
would be the,
PUD application.
yeah, the application and the layout and all of the
Yeah,
requirements
but you
for
have,
PUD.
you have separate time limits ticking. So it's not just to protect the public, it's to protect the applicant. And they were backed up against approval based on the timing of the submission of the preliminary plans, right up against where they would have had to vote or deny on the preliminary plans. So they have to do, I mean, it's really a 3-step process for them. Change or don't change zoning, approve or don't approve preliminary plans, approve or don't approve final plans. So the first two parts of that, sorry, I'll hold the wrong finger up here. The first two parts of that were right up against the deadline, so that's why they did that.
But if zoning was changed, then you're saying the applicant would have to start the process over?
If zoning was not
Not
changed.
changed, yeah. If it changes,
Yeah,
then they
but
keep
by the
it
same
going.
token, if council, reverses that, that throws out the
It's
timing
not
on the
voted.
preliminary, because you don't get to the final plan, so.
Okay.
You don't, I mean, so you're working, two bodies are working with separate deadlines and separate rules and regulations, so it does start looking a bit like a Rubik's Cube, I agree.
And I wanted to get clarification too on the vote last meeting. They voted on the preliminary plans, correct, Tom? So the very first plan that had the access from West Drive.
I thought they voted on whatever.
I thought it was the
They
preliminary
voted
plan
on the
that was
first
submitted.
I agree with
Is that correct?
David. I think
Because I had
that's
questions
exactly
about that, because there was a secondary plan that was brought to the meeting that showed
Well,
the access through Barney Oldfield. or-
I'll defer to Mark on this, but I believe the decision was that the planning commission accepted the preliminary application subject to certain revisions, a major portion of which included that rerouting of the.
Okay, I think that's the reason why I brought that up, because I think that was very unclear to the folks that were in the audience.
And I don't think
That
that amendment-
was the preliminary, the original plan that was approved, subject to amendments, obviously, was the one that showed the access through West Drive.
Yeah, that new amendment wasn't, I don't believe even available that night.
No,
Yeah,
That's a lot.
they didn't vote on it though. That's not what they voted on, they voted on the preliminary.
Preliminary.
Yeah, if I may,
Preliminary.
they had 3 options based on the procedure that night. Approve in its entirety the preliminary application, reject it or deny in its entirety the preliminary application, or approve and require modifications of the preliminary application. That's the route they chose that night. So, does that make sense? And that, I mean, that's indigenous in your legislation, those 3 methods, and that's typical zoning. I mean, typically, that's how zoning works.
Right. I just think at that night, I think it was very unclear to a lot of folks that were in the audience. And
Yeah, I won't
even
stick up for
sitting
my
here.
brethren that draft strange legislation. So.
Whole thing's crazy, isn't it?
Well, in reference to the motion for the public hearing, I guess I'll start things off with making a motion to schedule the public hearing for Monday, July 7th at 7 p.m. with the caveat that it could be hosted at the Wauseon Auditorium, understanding if that's not available, the date and time would change. I mean, I'm just
I
starting
think we
things.
need to change the time regardless, so that it can be, like what he said, we can have our meeting and then, set up the public hearing for the 7 o'clock time frame.
I'm assuming
Because that
that's
has to
why.
be changed on here, because it says 5 o'clock right now, it says.
Well, I believe that I think if we thought about it, we can make room.
We can bring a board chairs in
Yes.
here.
Yeah.
We
Put
got
another
chairs.
row in front.
But we're gonna have to come up with some sort of amplified system, so those people sitting in the back can hear.
Exactly. 'Cause you
So we
can't-
bring in all the people we want, but the first 4 rows can hear everything and nobody else can hear nothing, then what good's it do? So, yeah, we can get rid of that table, we could bring in a lot of chairs, we could put up more chairs
We
in
can
here.
move the chairs forward, and we can bring the crowd forward too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can get everybody in here.
But that's a part of the easy fix. I think the other fix is the sound.
We can get the sound. I mean, if it means having microphones, you can get it.
We have some over in Archibald.
Meg, what happened to our
can do it.
speakers that we have up there with these?
They didn't work?
Actually,
These
mic-
Tom, that's real nice, maybe I can bring her.
Those are geared up for her recording, not for amplification out to the crowd.
But they
they
did
do
at one
amplify.
time.
Yeah.
They
Yeah, they
can
do.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
Working.
because you could hear us out there.
Yeah, I remember.
They do.
Move forward here.
So I'll go ahead and second Shane's motion to schedule a public hearing for Monday, July 7th at 7 o'clock right here in council chambers. We will have more seating,
7
we will
o'clock,
have
we'll use that.
amplification.
Okay.
Motion moved by Counselor Chamberlain and second by Counselor Coast. Is there any more discussion?
I have a question. Will that work for you folks? I
think
mean,
you're
7
everything
o'clock,
I asked you to address, and-
because I know that your last,
I think.
at 5:15, I noticed there weren't that many. I mean, there was still a number, but 7 o'clock works better for you folks, correct?
Well, the sound is a really big issue, because I was in the front row and didn't hear everything.
Yeah.
Counselor Chamberlain?
Yes.
Counselor Coast?
Yes.
Counselor Matthews?
Yes.
Counselor Huner?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor Fry?
Should I recuse myself?
Abstain.
It probably wouldn't be a bad idea. You state a recusal.
5 yeas, 1 recusal, motion carries.
Motion to approve the bills as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Oh,
Yeah.
Motion made by Counselor Matthews and second by Counselor Huner. Counselor Matthews?
Yes, ma'am.
Counselor Huner?
yes.
Counselor Coast?
Yes.
Counselor Chamberlain?
Yes.
Counselor Allen?
Yes.
Counselor Fry? 6 yeas, 0 nays, motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion moved by Counselor Allen and second by Counselor Coast for adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.